Hey folks, we're back with Veteran Nation. Joining me as always is my co-host TC. TC, how you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't know if Carl's still watching, but they were talking about the Ukraine and who got what wrong. I want to point out that I got it all right. The enlist I called so
No, that's for those fans of the show. Go into our archives. You'll see we actually had an infantry officer come on. We talked in detail about the Ukrainian war when it kicked off, and yeah, it's funny how this stuff works around. What is it they say that history it repeats itself, but it also rhymes.
I'm never. You were the only one who says that.
I forget where I
The
heard
only
that
one.
somewhere. Um, but I wasn't here last week. How was it with Brandon? I watched the show. I got to get that posted to our archive. So for the fans out there, sorry.
Brandon wasn't on. It was just me and Lee.
Oh, you had Leon. Okay, I thought we had Brandon. I
Yeah.
I couldn't make it because my life
Well,
was in chaos that
I
day.
was kind of counting on you to get that all lined up, and you flaked on me. Something about your have family things you got to do.
Yeah, family stuff coming up, and I unfortunately will not be here next week. So if we wanted to record a show or something, we can do that. Um, but yeah, today um, I wanted to talk about something that's been happening. We talked a little bit about it 2 weeks ago, and we're starting to feel the reverberations, and that is the Second Amendment. Um, there's just been just this rush of mass shootings here in the last 2 weeks. Have you been paying attention to them?
Well, I would challenge your premise. I don't think there's been a rush of mass shootings. I think the way we define mass shooting has been changed, and just
Yes.
like the way we define school shooting has been changed.
I would
Um,
say I would use the FBI
Somebody quoted the.
definition.
Go ahead, Skipper.
I would use the FBI definition of a shooting that involving more than four people.
Okay, so the entire city of Chicago is a mass shooting
It is.
every weekend. Every weekend,
That is where they have the most.
starting on about Friday morning and going through until about Monday morning. I
And
mean, just like
all
so.
these
I
cities
don't.
with gun control, yeah, they have tons of mass shootings. If you go by the FBI's description definition.
Yeah, see, and so I patently reject the definition. Just like after you all day somebody was quoting, we've had 2,000 school shootings since 1979 or something like that. Well, how are you defining a school shooting? Well, their definition of a school. All right, we got Juan's telling us we got a video. Give me just a second now. The way they're defining a school shooting is if it takes place in the parking lot
Hmm.
and it's not related to any of the students. It's just some guy gets mad and shoots at somebody on the street in front of the school. It's considered, definitionally, it's considered a school shooting.
Hmm. Every town they
So,
had within their stats, they actually had a gentleman who he was parked adjacent to a school. He was not on school property. He wasn't even in the road immediately next to the school. He was across the street. He committed suicide in his vehicle, and they counted that as a school shooting.
so yeah, I'm sorry. I just it, if people if people aren't going to wake up and realize that they're doing this for no other reason, and I'm like, well, the more I see and the more that I find out that my initial call on what happened in Uvalde was correct, the more likely I am to start looking over at Alex Jones going, hey, bro, I'm sorry, you were right.
Hmm. I totally, I totally
So,
understand. In fact, what has really been, you know, eye opening to me has been the people who are jumping in, and there's a new talking point. It's that 18-year-olds should not own weapons. Because a lot of their talking points, well regulated militia. Yeah, the Supreme Court has already ruled on it and said that no, the Supreme Court is an individual right. The whole thing of, you know, they had muskets back then, and people like you and I have countered with, well, they didn't have the internet, but you still have freedom of speech. You still have cell phones, stuff like that. So we, I think, have done a pretty effective job, and now they're just trying this new avenue of 21-year-olds. And the thing about that is, are you saying that you don't want almost half of the military armed? Because that's all kids under the age of 21.
well, my our esteemed governor in the state of Minnesota, when being asked to deploy the Minnesota National Guard during the summer of love here after George Floyd died, just 2 years ago now, and we're still facing the repercussions of it, said, "Well, you want me to get a bunch of 18-year-old cooks to come down here with guns and deal with this?" And I was like, Actually, yeah, I would love if you would bring the people in from the rural parts of the state with guns because you would not have a crime problem anymore
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because these boys know how to shoot." And 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 there again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, what does that stop this kid? I mean, is anybody looking at the reality that he had two platforms that were both well into multiple thousands of dollars?
Yeah.
I mean, a,
I I can't
a
afford the
platform
equipment
that
that he's
cost two
got.
grand without a job.
Yeah.
He had he had about $4,000 in platforms and a nice vehicle without a job. No job. No job. I, look, clearly he had something going on somewhere, and so I don't know, but Juan, you probably have this guy set us straight here.
Yeah. Let's see this video that Juan's got.
Just want to point out some data real quick from the Crime Prevention Research Center about gun and gun violence. So the United States has about 40% of all privately owned firearms worldwide, while also only having about 4% of the population. And even with that, the United States only has 1.5% of total murders worldwide by firearm, only 2.2% of attacks with a firearm, and only 1.15% of mass public shooters worldwide. So we underrepresent ourselves in every single category, despite the fact that we have more guns than every other country in the world. So this idea that guns cause mass shootings and that this is a uniquely American problem is completely and totally not supported by the data.
Very true
Remember,
facts.
it was Australia that gave us their version of gun control, and they still had a guy go in and shoot up a chocolate shop. I mean,
And it wasn't. It's been what, 15 years, or actually a little bit longer than that, like 20 years since they did their buyback, and all of a sudden, the last 2 years, all the Australians who didn't want to get vaccinated were ushered into concentration camps. That's
I
all
don't
it
know if
takes.
I'd use the word concentration. I don't know if I'd use the word concentration camp, but you do you, Skipper.
Well, I mean, heavily thought
I'm,
camps. The jokes aren't getting any better.
you sure you didn't want to take this week off too?
But
Oh,
the other
let's hear Mr. Noir.
Do we have? Oh, sorry. I get a little bit sidetracked there.
He's busy doing
Literally the
multiple.
day after the Uvalde school shooting, this happened.
A woman in Charleston is being credited for averting a mass shooting. Charleston police say it all started when this man, 37-year-old Dennis Butler, was speeding up and down the parking lot. That's when he was approached by people attending a graduation party and a birthday party, asking him to slow down as children were playing. They said he seemed agitated and left, but shortly after, he returned to the complex, armed with an AR-15 style rifle, and started shooting at the crowd. Police say a woman then pulled out her pistol, shot him, and killed him.
I will say on the Charleston, West Virginia case, Charleston Police Department case, this lady was carrying a lawful firearm, okay? A law-abiding citizen who stopped the threat of probably 20 to 30 people getting killed.
Understand, if you're only watching mainstream media news to get your information about guns in this country, you're not only uninformed, you're misinformed. Furthermore, if you're only getting information about guns from mainstream social media platforms that lean left, you too are not only uninformed, you're misinformed about guns in this country. A woman with a handgun literally stopped a mass shooting, and none of the major mainstream media outlets have even mentioned it. Fox talked about it, the local news stations talked about it, hell, even USA Today talked about it. But here's the crazy thing. Even other countries' news outlets like the BBC even talked about it. But where is CNN? Where is MSNBC? Want to know what pops up when I Google West Virginia woman stops mass shooting? CNN? Their report on the Uvalde mass shooting. When the Uvalde school shooting happened the day before, the mainstream media was all over it, telling us about the shooter's entire life and how a good guy with a gun didn't stop a bad guy with a gun, when in fact a good guy with a gun actually stopped him, but because he was an off-duty Border Patrol agent, it didn't count. This woman wasn't a cop, she wasn't a Border Patrol agent, she wasn't Iron Man or Captain America, she was just a good girl with a gun who stopped a bad guy with a gun. I can't go anywhere or watch anything in the mainstream media without hearing about how important female empowerment is and how terrible and destructive toxic masculinity is. And here we have a woman with a handgun preventing a man from mass murdering people and nothing. We are literally saying that you'll get more fame from mass killing innocent people than you will if you use a gun to save the lives of innocent people. This was the ultimate example of female empowerment, eliminating true toxic masculinity, and the media treated it like a footnote. And you want to know why? Because they don't want to highlight the truth about guns in this country, because they know if the millions of people who are in the middle on this issue knew the truth, they'd become pro-2A. They'll report on every mass shooting for weeks, but won't talk about the 2013 CDC study that found that almost all national surveys estimates indicate that defensive gun use by victims are at least as common as offensive uses by criminals, with the estimates of annual uses ranging from about 500,000 to more than 3 million. In context of about 300,000 violent crimes involving firearms in 2008. Oh, they'll incorrectly talk about how dangerous AR-15s are, but won't talk about the fact that more people die from hands, fists, and feet than they do AR-15s. And people are stabbed to death almost 4 times more than people are killed with an AR-15. They'll talk about how we need universal background checks, but won't talk about the fact that according to the National Institute of Justice survey, many mass shooters have clean records and can buy guns legally. Long story short, they don't want you to know the truth about guns in this country because they can't get you to be on board with more gun control laws if they're constantly showing you story after story after story of good guys and girls with guns stopping bad guys with guns. You know, we talk a lot about empowerment in this country, except for when it comes to the Second Amendment. However, I can't think of anything more empowering than having the most effective tool to protect you and your family. So help me spread this message by liking and sharing this video with everyone you know. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment, because the Second Amendment, when it said militia, it wasn't talking about the government. It was talking about you. Also, if you want to know where to find the I'm the Militia shirt and merchandise, click the I'm the Militia link in the description section of this video. And don't forget to...
No, you hit on a couple great points there. One I will talk about for those of you who are in the Veteran Nation Facebook group. You already know that this last weekend I went to a gun show. I actually went with 2 females, and I was very surprised with the female turnout. I mean, it was here in California, but a lot of women are starting to take their safety seriously. and not just look at guns as a possibility, but really start asking hard questions, looking at options available to them, asking, hey, what will be best for my situation? So I was very, proud that was happening. But yeah, he absolutely hit the nail on the head. You can't trust. I only go by the FBI statistics because, like I said, every town, Giffords Law, all these places, they will.
Because the FBI is reliable.
Well, I mean, the FBI though, they at least they get the data from police departments, so they just say, "Here's what we want." Police departments feed them that stuff. With Giffords Law and Everytown, they are almost going out there trying to inflate it. Now, the biggest one I'll talk. If you look at it, it always says gun death. It doesn't say gun violence. It says gun death because they always want to include suicides, which account for about 45 to 40% of gun death. So you're almost increasing it by half by just adding, suicides in there. And they always do that. That's a trick I've noticed that they've been doing just to fudge the numbers.
Oh, you were waiting for me to comment. I thought maybe.
I don't
I'm
want to
just
dominate
gonna
the conversation.
Go back to.
Anything on the video that jumped out to you?
I guess so. Like he said something in there that I don't think it was entirely accurate. One, I had made the comment earlier today on my Twitter feed because I'm currently in Facebook jail, but I had made the comment on Twitter earlier today. Like when the Buffalo shooter did what he did, within minutes we had his manifesto, 180 pages. I'm sorry, I don't know any 18-year-olds today who would spend that much time online that would also have enough time to write 180 pages. But anyway, we knew who he was. We knew what motivated him. We had a conclusion about his character. We had a conclusion about his politics, which, of course, compared to his manifesto, was wrong. He called himself a leftist authoritarian.
Anarchist.
He's just confused mostly, but we really, contrary to what Mr. Noir said, we don't know anything about this guy from Uvalde. We know nothing about him. We think we do. We think we know some stuff, but when you really start to push people, we don't know anything about him. Mm-hmm. We've had 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We know nothing about him at all, other than he was upset and that he killed his grandma and that there was some family conflict. Well, okay, I'm sorry. Name somebody who shot up a schoolroom full of students or whatnot who hasn't had some sort of conflict with their parents. I can't think of one. And other than that, we know nothing about him, which is suspicious as all get out. But they're also, to me, and I'm okay with the pressure that's being put on the Uvalde School District Chief of Police and the Uvalde City Police and the Uvalde School District School Board and the City Council and whatnot, because what happened was criminal. We've talked about this when it comes to the federal government and the VA's apparent concern for veteran suicide. It's not just negligent, it's bordering on, if not flat out criminal, what they're allowing to happen to vets. Well, as more and more comes out about what happened in Uvalde, not only do we not know anything substantive about the shooter, but we've got clear negligent homicide. People who are clearly guilty of negligent homicide, and it still took an hour for the people on scene to say, "I've had enough. I'm disobeying orders." And I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad they did. what bothers me is that what the narrative of this is that it took them an hour.
Yeah.
That not one of them said, "Oh, whoa, I am not following that order from the get-go. I'm going in whether you like it or not." And it's not like he was in an interior room of the building where there were no windows. Just, and you get back to it, and parents were tased.
Yeah. Yep.
Thrown down, handcuffed. And I'm not arguing
nothing
that,
more than
that
trying
these
to
people
protect
should have
their
been allowed to
children.
rush the building, but I'm sorry, after 40 minutes,
Yep.
you will have to shoot me
Oh, yeah.
if that's my student.
Try to stop me from going
would
into
have
a
to
school
literally
where
shoot
it's
me.
being shot up and my kid's in there. You can tase me as many times as you want, and I'm still going to find some way. In fact, a lot of people want to arm veterans, and we have a lot of homeless veterans out there. And a little known law that people don't understand here in California, where we have tons of homeless veterans, is that if you are camping or going to or from camping, you can legally open carry. So one thing I want to do is I want to start an organization, and I want to arm the homeless veterans here in California. So if anyone out there wants to help me, if you'd like to send guns to homeless veterans here in California, reach out to me.
I'm
See, you're doing stuff for charity.
normally
I'm
on
doing
your
stuff for
side,
charity.
but I don't. I'm normally on your side, but I really just don't know if that's a good idea, there, Skipper. Not saying that they're bad people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm
At
just
least
like
the crime in LA would be cleaned up a little.
Yeah, would it though? Here's the thing that's really starting to bother me is this push. The colonels were talking about all this money in aid that's being spent to buy American military products and whatnot, and shipping it off to the Ukraine as we arm our allies and seek to disarm our enemy, while we're also trying to disarm Americans. But
this Ukraine war has it has kind of woken people up. If you saw George Takei, his tweet, he was like, "Hey, we have all these guns here. I bet they could help the people of Ukraine." And it's like, why do you think we have all these guns here? So something like that doesn't happen.
No, that was not George Takei being woke up. That was George Takei trying to find a way to get guns out of take my gun to go give it to the Ukrainians.
Well, yeah, that's what he wants, but at least there's some realization that arming citizenry means that we can prevent any type of invasion.
But the other part of the ramping up with this, and with those people who are willing to engage logically and intellectually, is the overbearing amount of pressure that's now being, and if you are a Republican, you need to understand that your for the most part, your Republican representative and senator are going to go along with this, enhancing red flag laws.
And Buffalo should show that they don't work.
They're arguing that. Well, not only do they not work, the issue at hand is what they want to do is they want to basically federalize red flag laws, so that no longer is it the individual action of the state to make that decision, which they shouldn't be making either. But now they want the federal government to pass legislation.
They're doing all this
to
stuff.
enforce it across the country, which then puts the government, the people in power, in charge of determining who is mentally unstable, which means they get to set the standard, which means they get to enforce the standard, which means that they get to then decide who does or does not meet that standard.
New York,
based on how they feel about you. That is
based off of
dangerous.
The Buffalo shooter, New York just passed a new law that you have to be 21 to own a long rifle. And the thing about it is, it was just ruled unconstitutional by the Ninth Circuit Court here in California. It was just ruled unconstitutional. And I don't think anyone has a doubt that the Supreme Court is going to back up the Ninth Circuit decision. So they're doing all this stuff and spending all this time on solutions, one, that we know don't work, and two, that we know will be found unconstitutional. And I have zero doubts that the Supreme Court will let a national red flag law fly, because they've said time and time again, the only person who can deny someone of their civil rights, and that is a civil right, it's in the Bill of Rights, is a judge. And it has to be a judge who looks at the facts.
But the arguments, we're allowing them to dictate the argument. We cannot have an argument about whether or not it works anymore. They want us to have that argument, because their argument will always come back to the exact same thing that they argued during the lockdowns and mask mandates. If it saves one life, it doesn't matter if it works across the board. It just needs to save one life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wrong argument. I don't even. You want to talk about it? You till you're blue in the face. That's fine. I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about the danger of red flag laws and the fact that they want to do it. And it's people on both sides of the aisle that have to agree to it. I don't care if it stops every gun crime in going forward. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because all they have to do is go, oh, we see that you said something on Facebook that was in support of the January 6 people who are sitting here waiting for their day in court. We believe that that's a sign of some sort of psychosis or psychopathy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go ahead and confiscate your firearms. That's the argument.
Deny
we need
you
to
one
be
of
having.
your Bill of Rights. Imagine if it wasn't the Second Amendment. Imagine if it was the Fourth Amendment. Hey, we've determined that your posts on social media are not, that they are an indicator of a mental problem. You now don't have due process. Do you think people would stand for that?
We do. We allow Fourth Amendment violations all the time. DUI checkpoints. DUI checkpoints are a Fourth Amendment violation.
Very true.
So yeah, the people will, because we want to be protected. We want to be protected from what we view as the readily available threat, which is my neighbor, or my neighbor's neighbor, or something, or the guy who's not my neighbor but just happens to be in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do not understand is that that Bill of Rights doesn't exist to protect me from my neighbor.
Yeah.
It exists to protect me from
The government.
the state. From the state, not the government, from the state. Period. And we'll say, oh yeah, I mean, reasonable, it's reasonable that somebody who's mentally unstable shouldn't have a gun. I had a conversation with the guy, albeit short, because I tried to be logical with him, and he got upset with me about it and cut off the conversation. But he's like, none of this is going to stop until we take all mentally ill people and isolate them from civilized society. This is supposedly a person on the right side of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying that to defend gun owners. And I'm like, whoa, bro, you just painted with a massively large brush to
I've actually got
say
a story about
you're
that.
okay. You're okay with the state coming in and swooping up every single person who's mentally ill and putting them someplace where they're isolated from civilized society, because if you have a mental illness, you're clearly not part of civilized society. That's disgusting. And it says to the state, I trust you more than I trust my neighbor. You need to protect me from those people because only you have that power. And that's what they want.
Yeah.
The Republicans and the Democrats.
Yeah.
Because there's not a single Republican right now outside of a handful who's going to actively push against this
It's a
because they
consolidation
do
of
not
power.
want to be beat up in the media, and they want the consolidation of a uniparty.
I'll give
That's
you an
what they want.
example of how these red flag laws do not work, and it's actually a military example. And Juan, I know you were an officer as well. If you came across this, let me know. But we had a Marine who uh, was starting to display mental issues, and when we sat and we talked with him, we found out he had actually been institutionalized, and his recruiter knew about it. Now, because it was before he was 18, we didn't get any of the, medical documents. And I wanted to process him out on a fraudulent enlistment because I was like, hey, this guy's going to go shoot up a mall one day and they're going to blame the Marine Corps. And he was nuts before he came here. They wouldn't go with a fraudulent
Clearly, you
enlistment.
joined the Marines.
They wouldn't go with a fraudulent enlistment discharge, but we actually found that Marine hoarding rounds and stuffing them in his desk at work from the rifle range. And because of that, we had violations, and we were able to get him out on a administrative separation. But he still, if he does something, every news thing they're going to call him a Marine Corps veteran and talk about, it'll all come back to, well, the military did this to him, but it clearly was not. But if the military can't find out about it, do you think a judge will?
Well, and there again, I appreciate what your point is, but I just still think that it's whether or not it works is not the right argument. I don't care if it does work. I want to be on the record. One, I'm not running for office, but I want to be on the record. I don't care if it saves every life. No red flag laws. Period. None. I will not support them.
Mm-hmm.
And I will lambaste and chastise anybody who is a public servant who supports it. If I find out that a sheriff supports it in my area, I will smear them all over the airwaves. Well, we got to have a reasonable. No, it's not reasonable. Red flag laws are not reasonable. And here's the issue about where they work and don't work. It criminalizes you. That it works to do that, and it also gets you killed. And I don't mean because now you don't have your gun and somebody breaks into your house. It was just a few years ago, an elderly gentleman, retired gentleman, somebody reported that he was mentally unstable. Without any due process, courts ordered that his firearms be removed from him, and the cops showed up to his house to take his gun, and they ended up having to shoot him and kill him. So that's where it works. Mm-hmm. It does exactly what the state wants it to do. It gives them an excuse to take your guns or kill you if you don't comply.
Absolutely.
And that's what they want. They want us disarmed. They want us disarmed. There's no other so like I know I keep coming back to this.
A disarmed populace is going to be compliant.
I'll beat the dead horse again. I don't care if it saves every school-age child from here until the end of eternity. That's not the point. That is not the point at all. Because it's not what they want. They do not care. They do not care. So, anyway, I'm sure Juan's got something.
I think he's got some videos.
Something for us, but go ahead, Skipper.
Oh no, I totally get it. For me, I'm always looking at the legal aspects of it, and I'm like, why are we entertaining this? Because half of these things, they don't even do what they think they're going to do. And at the meantime, we're eroding people's rights and infringing upon people's rights. And the Bill of Rights, I don't think they were perfect, but, it's a lot better than what, the alternative is. I mean, there's a lot of places out there that guarantee you. Well, I've been in places where I legally could not have carried a gun even if I, did everything they wanted to. And it's a scary feeling when you don't have that to fall back on. You have to wait on cops who may or may not, you know, violate your rights even further.
Yeah.
This is actually how I got into auditing videos, was watching Second Amendment auditors, and that brought me into First Amendment auditors, and yeah.
Uh, I the Second Amendment guy auditors scare me because I'm just convinced one of them's going to get shot one of these days.
They're definitely taking a chance. Juan, you got some more videos for
So
us?
it,
Due to inflation every year. But why is that the case? It makes no sense. Technology and trade actually reduce the cost of things. For example, the amount of metal that is necessary for a beer can is way down. We can produce far more food on far less land. And there's the dematerialization of culture and information. We no longer have the cost of all the plastic for VHS cassettes, or the paper, pulp, and delivery costs of a newspaper. All those things are now beamed to us over the internet. Those things all reduce the cost of production. So if it's cheaper to make stuff, why is it more expensive to buy stuff? Well, the answer is that governments induce or force feed inflation into our economy. They do this by growing the supply of money faster than the growth in the services and goods that money buys. What's their motive? Well, inflation leads to certain winners. One, government itself. When they create more cash, they can spend more cash without having to overtly tax it out of your hands. That means that they can quietly and secretly pass on the cost to consumers without anybody really realizing that they are the culprit. Also, the wealthy and the corporate class get richer as their assets inflate in value. The losers, of course, are the working class as their wages diminish in purchasing power. That's why housing, fuel, and other essentials have become more expensive and out of reach for our working people. Inflation takes from the have-nots and gives to the have-yachts, and that's why people in power like it so much. So
It's all a big game. It's all a big game.
oh, yeah. I mean, and yet our president in the last couple of days has been tweeting out about how wonderful and strong the economy is, and I'm just like, because you don't have to buy gas, bro. Because
I read a thing that said like something like 23% think that Biden is doing a good job on inflation, and all someone said is, where the hell did they find 23%? Where are these people?
so, what do you make of the inflation? I mean, this is the worst inflation I've ever seen.
Mhm.
Worst inflation anybody's ever seen in the United States. But what do you make of the the kind of the perfect coalescing of inflation along with um, the food shortages that are literally taking place right under our noses? As you know, Minnesota just had a egg production farm burned to the ground, killed like something like 200,000 hens. So we've got all of that happening. Plus, there are other food production facilities that are, burning up or being shut down. And all this uptick, as you said, this rash of gun, our mass shootings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that's a Wag the Dog situation? I don't know if you remember the movie Wag the Dog.
I do. In some aspects, yes. However, I also have learned from my various years in the government to never also discount that it could be 110% incompetence. I've seen way too many people who just couldn't even do their job, even though they were very senior in key positions. So I think it's a combination of both, and really that just makes the problem worse. Um, and I did logistics. I've studied supply chain management, and yeah, you have to put. Most of what logisticians do is they're looking to remove barriers within the supply chain. So if you're looking to undo that, it's really easy to insert barriers. It really is. So yeah, I would not say that I'm convinced it's not with nefarious means. I think it absolutely could be, and quite possibly is probable.
Do you think that people are the common sense everyday kind of folks that are out there that are working in the grind, so to speak? Do you think that they're waking up?
I don't know if they're waking up. I know that they're feeling it. Uh, I mean, I'm seeing people say, "Hey, remember the Trump shortages?" Because it was non-existent. Uh, that's where the Trump administration was amazing right now. Is it? People have a comparison. If you are of adult age, you've lived through both administrations and know that things operated completely different. Yeah, we had mean tweets, but we also had fully stocked shelves.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with empty shelves as long as I don't ever have to read another mean tweet.
And see, what's funny is like people like you and I are going to be less affected because we we know how to sustain ourselves. We have skills that if the power were to go out for a week, I think I would probably, yeah, it would suck, but I would be okay. And I think you might even, you know, we would make do. We would, you know, just operate off of
I'd be
rice.
better off than you. I mean, there's more wildlife in my area than there is yours.
Oh, I don't know about that. This is a rural area. Yeah, it's the desert, but I can kill some stuff. I got a lizard right outside that, that's a meal for two right there. And while I never went to,
Right, but all
to
I
SEER school, I
But
will
I could
eat
just go hit a
bugs.
deer with my car and feed my family for a month. So
Rabbit starvation is
you got to eat
is a thing.
lizards.
So to all the fans watching the show, if rabbits are your main source of food, if the power goes out, you can die of rabbit starvation. So get something with some fat in your diet.
Diversify.
Yeah, go fishing. But yeah, people like you and I think we will be fine. It's really the people in the cities who are the ones supporting the stuff that's going to starve them. We go back to George Takei supporting the same people who put his family into a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We got another video on.
Here's the baby. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, but your wife didn't make it. Then send me the one my wife did make.
It's always nice having a little bit of humor. Oh.
Somewhere that conversation has probably taken place. Yeah.
Oh. That just reminds me of the story
Skipper, you're not.
of the woman who named her daughter Famali, and when they asked her why'd you name your daughter that, they were like, no, the hospital did, because it said female in the last name. I don't know if it's a true story or not.
What's scary is I could actually see that happening too. So.
Oh, if I went back to my hometown, I would put money that it happened there.
It's almost as good as as our favorite laugh fest, which of course is the substitute teacher skit. But anyway.
Hey,
What? So you're
before
not coming next week? What are you abandoning me for this time?
I am actually going to be traveling, and I'll be going to a state that
I'm not
actually has
driving. I'm
freedom.
traveling.
What's that?
You're going someplace that actually has freedom.
Yes.
Oh, so you're going to be in Florida. So.
It's Florida or Texas. Which one? No, I'll be in Florida.
I'm going to go with Florida right now.
Yeah, I'll be in Florida. So we're going to have fun family days on the beach. I heard a rumor, though, before we leave. I heard that you're going to be on a show, on a big network.
I am.
That's what I heard. That you were going to be a guest.
Well, I'm doing Andrea's show. I didn't know that was on it. Is she on a big network? I think she just has her own platform.
It's a subscriber
I don't think her
network.
stuff shows on Gas. I don't think she shows up on Gas yet, does she?
Well, I don't think she's had
I
her
don't think they
inaugural
picked
show
her up yet.
Yeah.
Oh, did they pick her up?
I thought that's what they were doing with her show, because she already works for them.
Yeah, I didn't think they picked her up yet.
Oh, okay. I thought they did.
She didn't. Don't get me all nervous. You know how I get around famous people.
What, did OJ come up there?
Yeah, right. Oh, Skipper. Don't forget to send out that sweatshirt.
I will be getting that all set up today. Well, actually, I should say before I leave, so if it's not tonight, it'll be in the morning. And yeah, congratulations to that individual. They will get a Veteran Nation hoodie for buying the most coffee. It's a win-win.
Kicking in the most. Yeah, kicking in the most to help me out. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
Where do you want people to find you and buy your stuff? Your wares.
Email me at TC Pearson at protonmail.com. As you can see, I'm waiting for my next shipment of coffee, so Brandon and Carly, you need to get on it. Got more. I just got some more orders came in today. Got my merchandise right up here. You can find me on YouTube, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. I'm gonna just throw this out here. I'm gonna post this on Twitter later. I have a really good show. I'm done doing the self-effacing thing. I have a really good show, and I'm gaining traction. I'm starting to make connections with important guests.
You got the virus.
I mean, all of my guests are important, but I'm starting to get traction with more and more. Tomorrow night, I have a Republican-endorsed candidate for Minnesota State Auditor, Ryan Wilson, coming on, and
Nice.
Everybody's like, "Ooh, big deal, State Auditor." I had exactly Juan says I had him on last week, and I also had Andrea, and I also had Brandon, and I also had Skipper. So,
It was a great
are
show.
you sure you want to
People
lump
should
yourself
check it
in? Juan's like, never mind.
It was fun.
But I've got Ryan Wilson coming on tomorrow, and this is actually a really big deal because most people don't understand just how much power the state auditor actually has. And you know that they have power because Minnesota tried to eliminate the state auditor's position and lost that fight. And so we're having him on. I'm in the works to have some more people come that are bigger names in the Libertarian Party, like actual leadership positions in the Libertarian Party, working on having them on to continue my Libertarian Lowdown series. So I have great content. I'm going to tell you that right now. And if you're not watching, it's your loss because the content is good and it's worth it. And I've gave up a lot to put out this content. So you can buy my merchandise, or you can just swing over to my Subscribe Star and find me at Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Podcast, because we're going to have some very interesting exclusive content there. Got some stuff from Spike Cohen, and I have a video that I'm going to be putting up in parts of a young, I say young man, but of a gentleman who left his family behind and went to the Ukraine to join the Ukrainian military to fight against the Russians, and I spent 3 hours trying to talk him out of it. But then he turned around and used my arguments to convince other people to not go with him. I'll call it a win, right? If it saves one life.
Good callback. Well, I'm going to tell everyone, make sure you're following us on Twitter, at VetNationPod. I'm also at VetNationHost. We've got TC, he's at Rogue Regiment. We're on True Social, at Veteran Nation there. Facebook group, search Veteran Nation, and we'll pop right up. And yeah, thank you for being worth serving.